Good afternoon to one and all, and welcome to another afternoon installment of Live at the Waterhole. And kicking things off beautifully this afternoon with a group of elephants, a couple of zebra, and a warthog here at Tembe Elephant Park in KwaZulu-Natal. Before we get too carried away, though, my name is Liam Burrow. I'm the very fortunate naturalist that's going to be chatting you through a couple of these wild scenes this afternoon. And as usual, we like to keep the shows as interactive as possible. So please keep your questions, comments, thoughts coming throughout the show. We are standing by, waiting to hear from you. It's looking like a nice day here in Tembe, certainly across much of South Africa's east and northeastern regions. It's been a pretty temperate couple of days. We've received kind of a last-minute bounty of rain, at least in the Lowveld, as much as 100 mils between the 1st and the 5th of April. So pretty marvelous. It's been a bit of a disappointing year rainfall-wise, so every drop counts at this stage. Thankfully, the situation here at Tembe looks pretty fantastic. It is lush, emerald green, lots of water all over the show. What a way to start the afternoon. Hello, Joan Mello. Thanks very much for your comment. Hope you're having a good Saturday. Yeah, for face value, this looks like a bachelor group of elephants in the background, all bulls. And Tembe is actually particularly synonymous with enormous male elephants. There's some very, very special genes for the production of large tusks in this area. And certainly a couple of the biggest tuskers ever recorded in Africa have come from Tembe. Very special. That bull in the center there, just in the shade of the trees, quite a large one. I wonder if he's not the leader of this group. A couple of smaller guys kind of mixed in there. Elephant social structure, certainly for the males, is all based around a system of shared knowledge, transference of information, all kind of hinging on one very large, very experienced male. He's kind of the general in charge of a little battalion of younger soldiers, or askaris. Now that funny looking green stuff that you can see floating on the water there is not a wonderful thing. That's actually an alien invasive species of water cabbage from South America. It's not toxic, so the elephants will eat it, but it can be very, very bad for these water systems. Candace has asked, is the elephant social structure the most complex? Candace, I'm not 100% sure if it is the most complex, but it's certainly up there. I would say up there with the more intelligent cetaceans, things like whales, dolphins, and certainly the great primates, things like bonobos, chimpanzees, gorillas. Very, very complicated, intricate. Certainly these animals have high intelligence and very, very high emotional intelligence. And that goes for those great apes, the whales, dolphins, porpoises, and of course these lovely ellies. They are amazing. Alrighty, well, speaking of weather and such things, time now to have a look at what's in store meteorologically. Well, certainly looking like a nice temperate day across much of sub-Saharan Africa. We've left Tembe now. We are currently at the Vulture restaurant here at Victoria Falls Safari Lodge up in Zimbabwe. What a pleasure. And it is just buzzing with activity today. Looks like a good of white-backed. Those are the larger species there, white-backed vultures. And then the slightly smaller guys with kind of more brownish backs and wings are hooded vultures. There's also a very large marabou stork, two or three of them, strutting around kind of at the back there. And those storks, same as the vultures, are strict carrion eaters. Though that's perhaps not 100% correct with regards to those marabous, they will also take frogs, fish, a whole bunch of other stuff. But vultures, of course, are nature's cleanup crew, especially evolved to keep the bush nice and clean. Gina has asked, are marabou storks and vultures related in any way? Thanks very much for your question there, Gina. Not at all. So their only connection is probably the fact that they are both avian, they are both birds. So I'm sure they do share a common ancestor somewhere along the line, but it's not particularly close at all. Oh, wonderful to see, though. So I mentioned that this is a vulture restaurant, so it's a spot where food is artificially provided for these birds by the people that kind of run the conservation in this area. Now, you might be thinking it's kind of unethical to be providing food for wild animals, and in many other cases it certainly would be. But vultures in Africa have a pretty bleak state of affairs, to be perfectly honest. They really suffer outside of the protected areas from poisoning, from conflict with people. They collide with power lines. They just have a really tough time with things. So, so these initiatives to put out a bit of food, and that is safe food, food free from poison, are really, really essential to the well-being of these vulture populations. They absolutely do need a boost. It looks like whatever meat was put down there has pretty much disappeared, though. You can see quite a bit of conflict there, lots of squabbling. Tempers will flare as whatever food was on offer starts to get munched up.
We have an exciting announcement. Wild Earth is launching a YouTube membership program. For a nominal monthly fee, members get an ad-free channel, prioritized questions, early access to videos, and many more perks. You'll get fun features like badges and emojis that'll make you stand out in the chat. YouTube memberships will help us to continue with our mission of connecting people with nature while giving you access to lots of our amazing content.
Questions and comments are pouring in, so nice to have so many of you on board with us today. And hi to Diane in the UK. Nice to hear from you as well, Diane. I hope all is well on your end. Um, I haven't been doing as much flying as I would have liked to recently. I've been very, very busy with commercial pilot exams, but thank goodness the end is in sight. I think I'll have the ninth one finished in about a month. So hopefully, yeah, some African aviation ventures kicking off there. Very much looking forward to it. I'm not an indoor animal at all, so it's been quite an adjustment. Spas Ikonov asking, do I know about the ancestors of vultures? Spas, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not actually 100% sure. The vulture family is probably quite a long-lived one. I wonder if they didn't evolve from yeah, a more prehistoric sort of condor type ancestor. I'll have to have a little bit more of a look into that for you, Spas, and get back to you. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, thanks for some very educated questions already. And that's the beauty of dealing with wildlife and kind of finding wonder in nature. I've been a naturalist for about 12 years now, so pretty much all of my adult life, but I still find myself kind of pushed to learn new things all the time. And the beauty is that as science evolves, we're discovering new things all the time. Who knows what we will learn in the next 50 or 60 years? Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to lots more clarifications to some long-held questions. Alrighty, well, in the spirit of keeping things moving, I think let's head over to Tau Lodge in South Africa's northwest. Superb. So we are currently live at Tau Game Lodge in South Africa's Madikwe Game Reserve, right up on the kind of northwestern border with rather Botswana, I was going to say Mozambique, and looking at a pretty magnificent Nile crocodile. Just speaking of prehistoric things, chatting about those vultures, these crocodiles have been on Earth unchanged for somewhere around 200 million years. So talk about a winning evolutionary design. They are survivors that actually outlived the dinosaurs. This guy capitalizing on some lovely baking sun to charge his internal batteries there. Kelvin has asked, is it true that they are dinosaurs? Kelvin, not exactly. So the dinosaurs were obviously reptiles, but the crocodiles are sort of a more modern descendant. So ancient crocodile ancestors were much, much, much larger, um, but environmental constraints, changes in the climate, changes in the prey items that they feed on over the last couple of hundred millions of years have encouraged these crocodiles to be a bit more efficient, a bit smaller. Still, a Nile crocodile can grow up to 18 feet long, potentially a little bit more, weighing up to a metric ton, and arguably getting to well over 100 years in terms of lifespan. Yeah, that's another animal that I think is held in quite a negative regard. People don't look at a crocodile very favorably, but I urge you to look a bit deeper. Look beyond that scaly skin and those sharp teeth, and there's a lot more to be seen there. And they are one of very few reptiles that will actually defend their nest. So the female, in the summer months when there's lots of rain and the temperatures are nice and high, they will leave the water after having mated. She'll dig about 2 foot into a nice sandy bank and deposit somewhere between 10 and about 80 hard-shelled eggs into that soil. And then, yeah, she covers the nest up and she will wait nearby for the entire incubation period, 60 to 90 days, after which those eggs hatch. The little youngsters let out a little contact call, begging for help, and mom will emerge from the water, dig up that nest, and actually carry those tiny neonates, those tiny hatchlings, down to the water and in her powerful jaws. Now, keeping in mind those jaws can break the bones in a buffalo, um, but they can obviously also be tender enough to carry tiny, fragile babies down to the water. Hudson has asked, are there any animals that would combat crocodiles? Would elephants ever chase one? So crocs certainly do get into conflict with other animals. I've seen a little bit of negative interaction between crocodiles and hippos, and certainly a crocodile that does perhaps nip an unsuspecting elephant on the trunk could face the brunt of a full-blown kind of goring by that elephant. They've got to be very careful. So Fuller has asked a similar type question regarding to conflict in the water. So Fuller, certainly things like hippos are not particularly tolerant of crocodiles in their immediate vicinity, especially when they're breeding. A big hippo is not too much of a worry in terms of getting eaten by a crocodile. But when they have a little calf, it might only be 20 or 30 kgs, the size of sort of a medium-sized dog. If that baby does stray too far, definitely a crocodile could eat it. But keeping in mind, a fully grown hippo can bite a 4-meter crocodile into two fairly neat pieces. So I think there is this kind of a mutual respect on both sides. They try and stay out of each other's way for the most part. They are phenomenal things. I actually watched the most terrifying video of a group of canoeists. I think that's the right term for a collective noun of canoes, um, exploring a river somewhere in Uganda, and they were actually attacked by about a 4-meter crocodile. I'll try and find it again and share it to my Instagram story. So yeah, they can be pretty frightening things. Certainly, I've always been a bit nervous spending time on and around the water here in Africa. They're one of the few animals out there that genuinely looks at humans as a food source. Such is not true for the lion, the leopard. Um, but yeah, crocodile spots a human being walking along a riverbank, and its brain tells it that is definitely on the menu. Yeah, thankfully none of those canoe explorers got munched, but it certainly came close. Hello, Imogen. Nice to have you tuning in to Live at the Waterhole from Swansea in the UK. And a very, very happy hello to your granddad. Sunny day in the UK yourselves as well today. So I mentioned kind of as we came live to Tau here that this crocodile is just basking in the sun. So very different to you or I. A crocodile is an ectothermic animal. So it relies on an external source of heat energy in order to regulate its own body temperature. So it is essential that a crocodile spends multiple hours every single day sat up on a nice a hot riverbank, baking in the sun, to charge those batteries to give it enough energy to go about its business. This guy just taking it easy. We've certainly had some wonderful crocodile viewing here at Tau historically. I think there's at least 3 or 4 large crocodiles around kind of 9, 10, 12 foot long, 3 or 4 meters, and that kind of all share this waterhole. But yeah, we quite regularly see them fishing and interacting here at Live at the Waterhole. It's not a species we get to spend a lot of time with under many other circumstances, so always a pleasure to check them out here.
This is On Safari.
Diane, I'm not 100% sure if any of these crocodiles have nested at Tau. Um, I'm trying to think now how long I've been doing these Live at the Waterhole shows. I think the clearest sign of crocodile nesting would obviously be the arrival of little juvenile crocodiles. But I've certainly never noticed any hatchlings around here. So yeah, my initial thought would be no, but the exact reason why is a bit of a mystery. Perhaps these 3 or 4 crocodiles are all the same gender. Perhaps we don't have a male and female combination needed to make breeding possible. Yeah, which would be a pity if it is true. Superb. And Jordan, who's directing us, doing a very good job of taking us to the subject material we're actually talking about today. So we've headed up to Olifants West Game Reserve, just outside the town of Hoedspruit in South Africa's Limpopo province. And we are looking at three very sleepy looking hippopotamuses. Wonderful. I'm always very happy to come and visit this or these Olifants West cameras, and we've got a bunch of them, Cat Eye and Rosie's Pan, to name a few. I actually spent about 3 years in the very early stages of my journey as a guide, as a naturalist, actually leading safaris in this exact area. So it'll always be a game reserve that is very special to me. And as the reserve's name suggests, this is the Olifants River, a wonderful year-round flowing source of water and life to this section of the Greater Kruger. Lenny, thanks for your hello there. Nice to hear from you, and nice to have you on board as well. Everybody is very chatty today. It's nice to be getting so many comments and questions and hellos coming through. So these hippos are totally nocturnal. Very, very little activity actually gets done during the day. These guys are just trying to stay cool, trying to stay hydrated, stay out of the sun wherever possible. As soon as the sun sets around 5:30, 6:30 this evening, somewhere there, these guys will begin to leave the safety of the river and head up into the woodlands and grasslands to the north and to the south to graze. Yeah, as I mentioned when we went live at Tembe, rainfall has been a bit disappointing across much of southern Africa this year. Certainly looking at satellite photographs of kind of the southern African subcontinent and comparing them with April or March last year, it is night and day. It's certainly not looking very green. But as I mentioned, between the 1st and the 5th of April, we got something like 100 millimeters of rainfall across much of the lowveld, which is a wonderful last-minute bounty. And hopefully it breathes a little bit of last-minute life into the grass, which is the only food source for these hippos. And they will walk vast distances in the kind of the harshest part of the dry season, perhaps as much as 25 to 40 kilometers in a single evening to collect enough food. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it looking at their big bodies and their tiny short legs. They're very adept marchers. And pretty formidable in a sprint, if I may say. They probably get up to about 45 kilometers an hour, 25, 30 miles an hour, something like that. And now you'd be forgiven for thinking their nearest relatives in the wild would be things like rhinos or perhaps pigs, warthogs, something like that. But in actual fact, their closest collections lie in the ocean. So they are distant connections to the cetaceans, the whales. Yeah, a bit bizarre, but they have a very similar stomach system. A hippo has got a 5-chambered stomach, And if you x-ray a whale's flipper and compare it to the bone structure in a hippo's foot, they have the same amount of bones. Yeah, pretty fascinating. Now, once for sure, though, they can be enormously dangerous, and they're probably responsible for killing between 1,500 and 2,500 African people each year. They're pretty staggering from something that doesn't eat meat. But much of the conflict arises because in very rural areas, many quite poverty-stricken African people have no access to running water in their homes or their villages. So they are forced once or twice a day to come down to the water's edge at a big river or a lake to bathe, to fish, perhaps to collect drinking water. And inevitably, conflict arises between humans and hippos. So Fuller has asked, are these hippos a family? Is that little one in the middle a young one? Certainly it is, Fuller. You've hit the nail on the head. So I reckon these are probably two adult females with quite a large calf in the middle. And yeah, a section of river will be sort of patrolled and dominated by a chieftain, a river master, one very large, very aggressive, dominant bull. And he kind of oversees a big pod, a big group of cows and calves. And those bulls will fight every so often for dominance and for the rights to access that section of the river. Fights which can, from time to time, actually be fatal. They have pretty horrendous tusks. Certainly a set of upper and lower lateral incisors that hit each other at about 45 degrees in the mouth, self-sharpening as they grow. And certainly in attacks on people, they can punch beer bottle-sized holes in your body. So, yeah, hippos to be treated with the utmost respect. Alrighty, well, once again, I think in the interest of keeping things moving, let's head back over to Tembe on South Africa's east coast. So back over at Tembe, we are once again joining a very nice group of African elephants. I wonder if that one coming down, yes, just disappearing behind the bush there, it does actually have a radio transmitter on, a radio collar. So for whatever reason, that particular elephant is being monitored by conservationists in this area. There is a bit of elephant movement, to my understanding, between Tembe and Mozambique, the country to the north. So it is perhaps quite beneficial to know where certain elephants are going. Historically, elephants would have moved thousands and thousands of kilometers through the seasons at a time when Africa wasn't so densely populated by people. But these days, as elephants try and move to find fresh grazing and sources of food and water, as the seasons change, they inevitably come into contact with people along the way. And it's very easy to take the side of the elephant in many of these conflicts. But what you've got to do, I think, is put yourself in the shoes of a subsistence farmer, a person that literally only has something like an acre of corn which they're growing quite literally for their survival, to feed their family, earning less than $1 a day in some areas. And a group of elephant bulls wanders through in one evening and flattens the entire lot. Devastating and potentially quite life-threatening. So you can understand these people wanting to take matters into their own hands and possibly poison elephants, try and snare them, try and shoot them or spear them. But of course, that's not an appropriate solution. Thankfully, though, there are a number of wonderful conservation initiatives out there aiming to seek a more peaceful coexistence between elephants and man. Little warthog family popping out there as well. Very, very cool.
Experience captivating wildlife documentaries showcasing incredible animal behavior for free by visiting lionmountain.tv or downloading the app, accessible on both Apple and Android platforms.
Yeah, mentioning just a sort of minute or two ago that there are a number of conservation outfits out there seeking to kind of balance more of a sustainable coexistence between humans and elephants. One particular one that comes to mind is a phenomenal South African-based organization called Elephants Alive, uh, who seek to kind of focus on these problems that so many of Southern Africa's elephants do face, coming into conflict with humans, raiding agricultural areas, and they've had enormous success using some pretty sneaky facts of kind of elephant psychology and elephant behavior to keep elephants safe from conflict with people. Another very nice bull coming out into the open there. Some pretty hefty tusks. stopping to have a bit of a listen. Now, Elephants Alive has had a lot of success utilizing the elephant's number one fear, which quite bizarrely is the African honeybee. So it is believed, with elephants being purely nasal breathers, they can breathe out of their trunk itself, not out of the mouth, that a sting in there from an angry honeybee, obviously producing some swelling, could potentially be quite life-threatening to an elephant. So as a result, the sound or the smell of bees is a wonderful deterrent to elephants. So what Elephants Alive has actually been doing in a couple of these rural areas surrounding some of the bigger parks, Limpopo National Park in Mozambique, Maputo Elephant Reserve just outside the capital of Mozambique, and much of the greater Kruger, is installing beehives. Whoa, Ellie coming charging in there. Installing beehives around fields of crops, often hung on wires. And then obviously the bees go about their business pollinating crops, producing honey, which can be sold. And if a herd of elephants does decide to visit that field, if they bump up against those wires, disturbing that hive, the bees come out and the elephants turn tail and run in the opposite direction. So it's wonderfully sustainable. If you haven't checked it out already, you must definitely head to their social media and have a bit of a look at Elephants Alive and the very valuable work they do at conserving the elephants that we hold so dear. We are quite blessed here in South and Southern Africa. We don't seem to be having too many problems in terms of elephants being shot for their ivory, but go up to places like East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, where the situation is a stark contrast. In East Africa, an elephant is reckoned to be shot every 15 minutes for those tusks. Lisa has asked, will elephants ever trample small things like mongooses? Lisa, quite potentially. Having said that, though, elephants are pretty dexterous with their feet, and in spite of being quite leathery, the feet are also quite sensitive. So I can't say I've got any personal experience seeing an elephant flatten something. Not myself. But I have no doubt that occasionally they do step on small things. I did once find a black rhino footprint in the mud at one of the reserves I guided on, with a tiny serrated hinged terrapin, a little freshwater chelonian, relative of the tortoise, and in the middle of this rhino track, crushed completely flat. So, yeah, unfortunate for that little terrapin, but it obviously does happen occasionally. Yeah, this is quite a large elephant bull. No mystery as to the gender of this particular individual. Diane has asked, in regards to the chat we've just had about bees and elephants, if this is innate behavior and how do they know to be afraid of bees? Diane, an excellent question, and one that I don't honestly have a solid answer for. But once again, Ellies are extremely perceptive and very, very intelligent things. I wonder if it doesn't just come down to instinct. a little bit like a lot of human beings are instinctively afraid of things like snakes. It's just something natural, something primal in their brain that tells them danger, danger. I could be wrong. It could possibly be something that is educated into them, something that adult cows, through experience, pass on to the calves. Isn't nature fascinating? Yeah, there are still loads of mysteries out there waiting to be solved. And perhaps in many cases, some of those won't be solved, but that just adds to the magic. Let the natural world keep some of her secrets. Fuller has asked, was that elephant bull in must? Is that the reason for showing us his manhood as he walked past? Fuller, he didn't present any very strong must signals. The gland between his ear and his eye wasn't streaming, if I was paying enough attention there, and I didn't see him dribbling urine. So both of those characteristics would usually give us a good idea that a male is in must. But honestly, extending the genitalia like that is quite possibly a very effective way of thermoregulating as well. So keeping in mind some of the thinnest skin on the elephant is on that organ. So obviously, exposing that to the open air is a pretty effective way of radiating heat. And these are all bulls. Something breathtaking about seeing elephants in situ, in their natural environment. I hope for all of you out there that haven't had the privilege of experiencing it in person, that at least once in your life you do get the chance to see wild elephants in Africa. It is like nothing else.
This morning we did have some lions. Cedric's probably going to follow that one.
So back over at Tower once again, looking at perhaps a different individual crocodile. I don't think this is the same guy. Looking lovely and yellow as his internal temperature has risen. I was chatting in an earlier segment about an incredible piece of footage captured by a kind of an adventure kayaker called Benny Ma, which I've just shared to my Instagram story. You must check it out at Liam Burrow Wildlife. Yeah, a pretty frightening encounter of a crocodile trying to well eat some people doing some canoeing in Uganda. Jimmy has said he loves how they lay with their mouths agape. Yeah, Jimmy, I like it as well. It's something that crocodiles do when their internal temperature has risen sufficiently to the point where it's perhaps actually getting a little bit too high. Just behind the croc, a couple of Egyptian geese moving around as well. So yeah, this croc will eventually get to the point where it's taken in enough energy from exposure to the sun, and that will ultimately drive it back into the water. But as he opens his mouth, he radiates quite a bit of extra heat off of that thin skin in the mouth. Certainly a very well-fed individual. You can see a wonderful kind of fat supply there on the tail as well as the belly. Certainly a very awesome close-up there. So thanks to Jordan, the director, I think, who's driving the camera. It might be one of our zoomies. That's certainly... Oh, Limbury. Okay, so it's not Jordan. It's one of our zoomies. But thanks very much to the zoomie for getting us in nice and close. And again, you're getting a wonderful close-up look of those osteoderms, of those sort of scaly, bony developments on that crocodile's skin, which serve as protection. Protection not only from their sources of food, which can be quite dangerous, big antelope, zebras, but also from when these crocodiles fight one another. Two male crocodiles vying for territory and the rights to mate will swim up alongside one another and literally just start battering each other with their heads, their jaws and their teeth. And these battles can be so violent that they can actually lose an entire jaw. Tristan has asked, will crocodiles ever eat dassies? They absolutely will. Tristan, to be perfectly honest with you, there is not a whole lot that a crocodile won't eat. Up to 70% of what they do feed on is fish, but of course that final 30% could be made up of absolutely anything else. From other reptiles, smaller crocodiles, to birds, to mammals, and as mentioned before, certainly people as well. And the comments are pouring in. Thanks, Spas. Interesting strategy for cooling and warming reptiles have, especially crocodiles, Liam. Certainly, Spas, you've hit the nail on the head. Sure, check it out. Amazing how when those jaws close, those teeth interlock so nicely. They've evolved almost like the teeth in gears to kind of mesh together. A crocodile has got one of the most formidable bite forces of any animal out there. Quite amazingly, all of the muscle that has evolved on those jaws facilitates the clamp down. So they've got something like 1,000 pound per square inch crushing force. But the muscle there that facilitates the opening of the jaws is tiny and underdeveloped. So when conservationists capture a crocodile to move it out of these areas, one of the The most important things they obviously need to do is secure those jaws, close them. A single piece of duct tape is often enough to keep those jaws closed. Pretty bizarre. Julia has asked, why won't it eat those Egyptian geese? Julia, he certainly might. Um, I think a lot of the time, though, the geese are pretty alert. They know what the crocodile is, and to keep their distance a bit. I think the angle of the camera there was perhaps a bit deceptive. It made it look like the geese were right next to the crocodile. But they will try and stay out of the way, because he will happily eat one of them. And a big hello to Wes and Julie. Happy birthday to Julie. Nice to have you guys on board for the Live at the Waterholes show as well. Chatting crocodiles. Yeah, that is a pretty frightening thing. Loads of respect for a croc. And I think from my side, perhaps quite a bit of genuine fear as well. I can think of literally nothing worse than being in deep, dirty water with a large Nile crocodile. Yeah, frightening stuff. But again, it's not all doom and gloom. They are really special apex predators that deserve their credit. Also quite a bit of movement of waterfowl. I think those are red-billed teals in the background in that sort of vegetation in the water. Hello, Olivia. Thanks for your question as well. Olivia has asked, are crocodiles opportunistic, or do they actively hunt? Olivia, a bit of both. So yeah, certainly crocodiles will go out of their way to actively hunt, to kind of trawl through the shallows for fish, or to kind of position themselves at the water's edge waiting for antelope. There is some absolutely stunning footage of a mugger crocodile somewhere in India on one of the latest David Attenborough BBC type wildlife specials. It might have been Planet Earth 3, of this mugger crocodile actively camouflaging itself. So swimming underneath kind of pads of floating vegetation and scooping up branches and things on its back in an effort to kind of improve its cryptic camouflage, and then positioning itself with all of that floating stuff on its back right next to the water's edge and waiting for an antelope or something, in that case a deer, to come within striking distance. Now that's the first time I've witnessed an example of that particular behavior. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth a look. I think it was Planet Earth 3, as I say. Hello, Gio. Thanks very much for the kind comment. Yeah, what a pleasure it is to be chatting to you. As I say, I haven't had much of an opportunity to do much Wild Earth stuff, much of these Live at the Waterhole programs over the last 8 or 10 months or so. But as things are calming down a bit with my pilot's exams, I'm hoping to get a bit more involved in the bush again, get my bush fix. I certainly have missed it. Black-winged stilts, those are the kind of white-breasted birds with the very long legs that we're looking at there. And you can just see that red-billed teal kind of obscured in that vegetation. Always wonderful birding here around the Tower waterhole. Well worth a look. I've always said an interest in birds will serve you very well on trips out to the bush. We don't always have sort of ample sightings of the big high-profile things. So yeah, if you can find interest in things like birds, one thing you can be sure is that birds will always be around. And in the same vein, Madison has asked, do I enjoy birding? I certainly do, Madison. I'm by no means an expert or particularly skilled, especially when it comes to identifying the tiny little brown jobs. Our crocodile doing some shifting there. But certainly, Madison, I do like the birds. And there he goes. I think slowly but surely getting too hot. Oh, there's his friend slinking in just to the right. Yeah, so there were two. You can see how yellow the one in the water is in comparison to his friend up on the bank. Crocodiles have got photosensitive skin cells. So what that basically means is a colder crocodile is darker. And that's very effective because darker shades are vastly more effective at absorbing heat from the sun. As the temperature starts to rise, it gets to the top of the spectrum, and that crocodile gets lighter. Its skin changes and quite literally starts to reflect the excess heat. And again, once it gets a little bit too much, they gape. And if it gets way too unmanageable, they end up moving back into the water. Joan says she's been watching this show for about 6 years, and everybody is so nice. Wonderful to have you with us, Joan. Always a pleasure to chat a loyal Wild Earth viewer, and of which there are very, very, very many.
We have an exciting announcement. Wild Earth is launching a YouTube membership program. For a nominal monthly fee, members get an ad-free channel, prioritized questions, early access to videos, and many more perks. You'll get fun features like badges and emojis that'll make you stand out in the chat. YouTube memberships will help us to continue with our mission of connecting people with nature while giving you access to lots of our amazing content.
Aha, so back over at Tembe once again. Again, Tembe Elephant Park is in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa's sort of east coast area, right up on the southern boundary with Mozambique to the north. I was wondering if this might be a little breeding herd, but I think this is still bachelors, still all males. There are a couple of smaller individuals there, but again, keeping in mind many African elephant bulls join these bachelor groups when they are quite young, possibly as young as 14 or 15 years of age. I think that is the case for that youngster in the middle. Yeah, even for those of us that spend lots of time with elephants. Whoa, that guy doing some chasing in the back there. I think we possibly have a musk bull on the scene here. So that guy furthest from this group, the big bull, doing that sort of cocky swagger as he comes around the bush, almost certainly in a must cycle. For anybody who doesn't know what must means, must is a natural period for a male elephant that occurs every so often, in which his internal testosterone levels transition from a nice, happy, healthy level to about 60 times what they should be. Must is a Hindi word. Translated from that language, it quite literally means drunk. And it's a fairly apt explanation of how that elephant is feeling. He's out of his mind on that testosterone. It's quite natural. It encourages those males to kind of battle each other for dominance, to prove themselves as worthy to the females, and ultimately to encourage them to go out there and mate. There's that individual with the collar again. Still hanging on to hope that we might get a sighting of an elephant calf at one of our feeds. A young viewer at the start of the show expressed interest in hopefully seeing, so we will see. That young one taking the opportunity to pick on something smaller than him for a change. Kim has asked, will a musk bull ever kill youngsters? Certainly, Kim. In certain instances, conflicts between male elephants, spurred on by a big musk bull, can be fatal. My dad, working as a conservation pilot fairly recently in a reserve in, check this guy out, in Mozambique, came across a scene of an enormous elephant bull, probably 6 or 7 tons in size, with a large puncture wound in one of his temples, almost certainly inflicted by the tusk of another elephant bull. Thankfully, I think the majority of their fights are over simply through posturing, through showing one another their sort of body sizes and their tusks and whatnot. But occasionally, when two bulls are very well matched, the battles can be very, very serious. Musk bulls in some areas have also caused huge issues in the absence of the large governing, kind of calming adult males. They pick fights with basically everything out there that moves, from buffalo to hippos. And quite tragically, in the case of Pilanesberg, another South African reserve a number of years ago, young elephant bulls in must killed something like 40 or 50 white rhino, simply out of that must-fueled frustration. Incredibly, though, the problem was solved once again by using a little lesser-known sort of piece of information about elephants' social structure, and that is once again that adult males are very essential to the male social structure. So Pilansberg approached the Kruger National Park. I said to them, please, can we have a couple of big bulls to solve this problem? Kruger went out, captured 4 or 5 enormous mammoth, sort of 40-year, 6-7 ton plus sized individuals, introduced them to Pilansberg, and the problem stopped immediately. Again, those big general, big dominant males serve a vital function in those environments at keeping these younger, boisterous bulls out of trouble. Amazing. So once again, we'd love to keep these live at the Waterholes shows as interactive as possible. This is obviously all live. So yeah, please keep your questions, comments, thoughts coming throughout the show. We are standing by waiting to hear from you. Let's chat all things wild. Once again, you can see that elephant way in the back in the top right corner there with something white on his neck. It is a radio collar. And so this guy at some stage would have been tranquilized probably from a helicopter, put to sleep for a couple of minutes while a team of conservationists attached that collar, which is to some degree solar powered. And that'll give conservationists in the area the ability to track this movements with either GPS technology or a telemetry set using radio waves. Yeah, understanding how these elephants move and where they go through the seasons is a vital set of information that will give conservationists the ability to conserve the areas that these elephants actually require for their survival to a better degree. They're obviously big, powerful animals, and in many cases, fences don't stop them. So elephants will leave reserves, often getting into very big trouble when they do. So if we can understand where they are moving and the corridors that they are using, often it gives us a better ability to warn people along the way, to put in sort of protective mechanisms, and to keep our precious ellies safe. Very nice group of plain zebra getting chased off by another collared individual. So there's 2 with collars here. Full of beans. So I think that was more playful than aggressive. It was just for fun, because he can. So this elephant looking like it's taking a bit of a drink from the freshwater source here at this Tembe pan. That looks like an artificial well to me. So many of these water points are artificially provided, while there are obviously natural pans out in the bush. These ones that provide a source of water throughout the year, often pumped from underground through a borehole and a solar pump, keep the wildlife streaming into these areas, which is obviously a very, very good thing for tourism. And Ellie's notoriously fussy drinkers. They only like to take the cleanest of water. Understandable when you're drinking between 100 and 300 liters of water at a time. Yeah, as mentioned in an earlier segment, the water here is lovely. It looks nice and clean, but unfortunately that green stuff floating on the surface is not a particularly good thing at all. It's a highly invasive alien species of water cabbage, sort of a floating cabbage type plant, which actually originates from South America. Very, very, very bad stuff. Yeah, it is edible, so the Ellies will eat some of it, but it reproduces at such a vast rate, it can form this almost impenetrable mat, which covers the entire water surface, blocking out all the sunlight, which is essential, and yeah, ultimately even drawing all of the oxygen out, making the water quite stagnant, quite toxic. So I wonder if something can be done here at Tembe. There's certainly parts of the Vaal River in South Africa's Gauteng province have been making big efforts to get this alien floating vegetation out, hyacinth and stuff like that. Lorraine has said, very interesting regarding the Pilansberg Ellies killing rhinos. I visited there several times and didn't know that. Yeah, Lorraine, it's a very, very interesting bit of information. How fantastic that they managed to solve it with an elephant social solution, if I can call it that, rather than putting elephants down or doing something drastic like that. Solve it with their own social structure. That one at the back having a lovely scratch of his backside on that fallen tree. A big itch deserves a big scratch.
This is On Safari.
Thankfully, in my 12 years out in the bush working as a guide and a naturalist, I've been very fortunate not to have had many nasty encounters with ellies. I've always personally found them very, very good at communicating their emotional state with their body language. So if you are kind of keyed in, if you're connected to those elephants, you can understand when it's okay to approach, when it's okay to get nice and close, and conversely, when it's better to stay back a bit, give them some room. Yeah, and the signals are subtle, but I'd say, yeah, to the trained eye, they are as plain as the nose on your face. Always a pleasure to spend a bit of time with these marvelous sentient beasts. And I've always said, once you've experienced them out in nature, in situ, where they belong, ranging over thousands of kilometers, as is healthy, you will look at elephants kept in captivity, in particular in zoos, through very, very, very different lenses. An elephant in captivity lives a very hollow existence. And the saddest and most depressed of all are elephants kept on their own. So yeah, while zoos certainly serve a purpose, I won't deny that. I think gone are the days of having elephants in zoo conditions. And we need to put pressure on those institutions, many of which are quite financially driven, to slowly phase out their captive ellies. It's not ethical. If you want to get entertainment from wildlife, it's better to watch it on TV or to pay the money and visit the animals out on safari where they live in the wild. And Erin has asked quite an interesting question. And hello, Erin. Thanks very much for doing that. Erin has asked if I would say that an elephant cow with calves is as aggressive as an elephant bull in must. Helen, absolutely. Or Erin, sorry. Absolutely. So elephant cows can be as dangerous, if not even more dangerous and confrontational than an elephant bull, especially when it comes to the duty of protecting an elephant calf. They are some of the most phenomenal moms on the planet. There's very little that they won't try and do to protect a calf. So you've got to treat breeding herds with an extra degree of respect. Give them lots of exit routes, never block their path, and certainly never threaten a tiny little calf. Essentially, if you put yourself into the mindset of a mother elephant, an elephant cow with a youngster, she carried that baby inside her for 22 months. And there's a very strong possibility, if that calf is born a female, that it will be by its mother's side for that adult cow's entire life. So their bonds are unbelievably strong. She will absolutely trample you to death if she thinks that you are a threat to her youngster. And can't blame her. But yeah, if you do find yourself visiting one of South Africa's wilderness areas, Tembe Elephant Park, as well as the Kruger, allow self-drives. So you basically hire a car as a tourist and you can drive yourself through the park on kind of a combination of tar roads and dirt roads. And in both of the reserves I mentioned, encounters with elephants are basically guaranteed, but best to tread with caution and treat them with the respect that they absolutely deserve. If you stick with the very simple concept that elephants have a right of way, you will find it a safe and happy experience. But try to cut an elephant off in the road for a photo, or pursue it too closely with a car, something like that, you could find yourself in some very deep trouble. So don't take a chance. Superb. Well, now for something completely different, let's head up to Old Donyo in Kenya to have a look at the waterhole there. Something completely different, as I said. So up here at Old Donyo, which is a wonderful lodge in southern Kenya, we're looking at an East African ground squirrel. So very similar to the ground squirrels that we find in the arid regions of southern Africa. These East African ground squirrels live a very similar life. So completely terrestrial, they don't climb trees. They live in well-established burrows, often in colonies in the ground. This guy happily munching away at some sort of seed, possibly out of a piece of elephant dung, I'd say. And quite nicely using his flattened tail as a parasol, so something like an umbrella, a sunshade. It'll just help to keep the sun off of his back and his head. He's got to be quite careful. It's only a tiny thing, probably about the size of a European grey squirrel. So very, very vulnerable to attacks, in particular from things like birds of prey. So he'll keep a sharp eye out. Now they'll also be taken by things like caracal and servals, as well as African wildcats, all of which I believe are found around here at Old Donyo. But more likely for those cats to be active in the darker hours. So whatever he is eating, it must be a tasty thing. All rodents are quite amazing for the fact that their teeth, those funny buck teeth in the front that they're so famous for, grow constantly throughout their lives. So they have to have the ability to gnaw, to chew at things. If they don't, for instance, if something like a squirrel is kept in captivity and is fed food that is too soft, the teeth overgrow horribly, and it affects the health of that animal. And yeah, certainly huge to tiny, all things great and small. From the African elephant, the largest of Africa's land-based animals, to one of the smaller. Again, we try and look at these safaris as holistically as possible. Ultimately, in order to get a nice look at the entire environment, you have to treat all elements of the landscape as valuable. And there is value in absolutely every living thing. You just have to know how to look. I personally have often found the most beauty in the smaller things. There's also a lizard or something on the rock in front of us, but I think it's a bit out of focus there, out of view. Plenty of butterflies around as well, as is characteristic of this time of the year. Kenya has had fantastic rainfall in the last couple of months after a few very disappointing wet seasons. And Lorraine has said the squirrel should head for safe cover. Certainly, Lorraine should probably be quite wise, though he has a pretty well developed set of eyes there. So I think sitting out in the open a bit like a cheetah does, gives him a good chance to spot danger coming at a distance. Yeah, this place is full of life at the moment. I've spent much of my guiding career in South Africa's Lowveld, guiding in regions like the Greater Kruger, Olifants West, the wonderful Sabi Sands, areas where these ground squirrels don't occur. But kind of just towards the end of lockdown, I visited Tswalu in the Kalahari with a couple of sets of guests for the first time, and that was the first place I ever saw these ground squirrels. They're wonderful things. And in the Kalahari, they often share their burrows, almost like a timeshare type situation with things like the yellow mongoose and Kalahari tent tortoises and even families of meerkats. All of these different species inhabiting the burrow at the same time. A bit like a multicultural apartment complex. Alrighty, well, in the interest of keeping things moving once again, I think we will leave this ground squirrel at Old Donyo to his business. Let's head over now to Olifants River to have a look at what's happening there. So back up on the northernmost boundary to the spectacular Olifants West Nature Reserve, just outside the town of Hoedspruit. We've got another wonderful group of elephants just cooling off in the shallows of this river. It's a little bit tough to see with the light the way it is. These ellies are in some quite dark shade. But I reckon this is another bachelor group, a group of bulls. Still no luck on an elephant calf yet, but who's to say one won't appear at some stage soon. This is such a stunning stretch of river. You can see these enormous trees, lots of ana trees, sycamore figs. It's one of the very few places I've viewed Pell's fishing owls, a highly endangered species of owl, actually out in nature. And here on Olifants West, the sightings of those Pells were actually regular. At some stages, sort of multiple sightings per week, with a pair even nesting. For anybody who doesn't know, the Pell's fishing owl, to anybody who likes to watch birds and take photos of birds, is like the holy grail. It's one of the most special and sought after species. Lorraine has said she just loves watching elephants and is visiting Addo Elephant Park next month. Can't wait. Lorraine, that is very exciting. Certainly something to look forward to. I've never had the the opportunity to visit Addo, but it's certainly on my list. I believe it's a spectacular place. A wonderful and fairly arid environment to view ellies in. I believe also stunning sightings of things like the brown hyena. So fingers crossed, I'm sure it's going to be a great trip. One very tall bull in there. And the large tusker that we do see from, or did see from time to time on Pridelands with Wild Earth, Iselwini, does roam through this Olifants West area. So I'm always hanging on to hope that he's going to show up on one of these feeds. He hasn't yet, but you never know. He has been seen in the area in recent weeks, so yeah, wouldn't that be a bonus? Kim Twister Olifants is beautiful. Couldn't agree more. Spectacular area. The area has also, in the last decade or so, been a part of the Black Rhino Range expansion program. So a stunning initiative to try and reintroduce black rhinos into particularly appropriate areas that have the right vegetation, the right conditions for them, and with some wonderful success out here. The rhino, as many of you will know, is in a lot of trouble, perhaps even more trouble than the elephant in much of its range. Long may they both live. Thankfully, there are plenty of very good, very dedicated men and women out there risking their lives, putting it all on the line to keep these incredible animals and wild spaces protected. A very big hats off to all of the rangers out there.
Experience captivating wildlife documentaries showcasing incredible animal behavior for free by visiting lionmountain.tv or downloading the app, accessible on both Apple and Android platforms.
we're fast approaching 3 p.m. Here in South Africa's Lowveld region. So, yeah, we'll be wrapping up the show, unfortunately, in about 15 minutes. But of course, you have the sunset safari to look forward to. And I will be back on your screen for, I think, the next 3 days. I'm here at Live at the Waterhole, chatting you through some more wonderful waterside scenes. So be sure to tune in. Without a doubt, it promises to be an adventure. Beautiful stretch up into the canopy of that tree to grab a tasty mouthful of fresh shoots. Amazing. That's probably 5-6 meters off the ground. 18 feet, something like that. Beyond the reach of even the giraffes. And quite amazing, you can almost see a browse line on a lot of these hardwood trees. That sort of flat line underneath the canopy, which shows the sort of height to which elephants can actually reach. In certain areas, certainly places like the Namib Desert, where desert elephants do occur, this behavior of pulling down branches that would otherwise be out of reach, and often leaving behind lots of scraps, also provides a source of food for many other small species that would otherwise really battle. Moonbeam Smith has said, when I was at Addo, we saw almost no ellies as they were all off on the restricted side of the park. Now that's a bit of a bummer, Moonbeam, but I hope you can get back to Addo at some stage, or perhaps even come up to the Greater Kruger. There's certainly no shortage up this way. Yeah, the bush can be a bit hit and miss. There's obviously no guarantees of sightings on a safari. But certainly picking your location well and coming at the right time of the year, you can kind of maximize the chances of getting good sightings. And I've always found that if you come out into one of these sort of bush environments with a very open mind, trying to sort of go into it with as few expectations as possible, it is very, very unlikely that it'll ever disappoint you. There is so much stuff around to look at. And spend enough time, the bush will provide. I've been very, very fortunate in about 12 years as a guide to see pretty much everything. And in this kind of environment, certainly the vast majority of all the species, all manner of interactions, it's been a wonderful journey. Lawandi has asked, how is their vision? Now, Lawandi, a very good question. So at close range, it's probably not too bad. I think they see about as well as a person. But their distance vision is not great. So further than about 100 meters, I think everything is pretty much blurry. Thankfully, their sense of smell and their sense of hearing is a phenomenal compensator. So we've got to be quite careful on walking safaris where you encounter elephants. You're quite safe at sort of 50-60 meters from them, and they can't see you if you sort of stand fairly still behind a couple of thin bushes. But should the wind shift, they are certainly going to smell you from 150-200 meters away. And should someone's phone ring or somebody sneeze or scream or do something funny, they will absolutely be aware of you. So it does need to be done quite carefully. I had an encounter on a walking safari with when the first Apple Watches came out. And part of the walking safari briefing is that everybody puts their phones onto. We had this wonderful encounter with this rhino, everybody behaving themselves quite nicely. We were seated behind a nice fallen log. We had these rhinos come to maybe 10 or 15 from very close. And this woman's Apple Watch went off quite loudly. And it was so new, she didn't know how to silence it. So yeah, there were a few moments of panic there. And the rhinos sort of came rushing up, panicked, and in the other direction. Technology, the enemy of the walking safari.
Oh, how time flies when you're having fun. Wild Earth is turning 17 and we want to make the years count. 17 years of achievements, close encounters, and special memories.
He's got it, and he's straight up a tree.
Come along as we reflect on our top 17 greatest moments. Here's to more years of connecting you to nature. Wild Earth, connecting with nature.
Such an idyllic spot. Now, this Olifants area is a wonderful, wonderful area to visit on safari. It's quite famous for its lion prides, which specialize in hunting giraffe. And of course, things like elephants, big herds of buffalo, very good leopard, wild dog, cheetah. I definitely enjoyed my time there. Missy has said, best birthday gift with these beautiful scenes. Thank you. A very happy birthday to you, Missy, from the whole team here at Wild Earth. What a wonderful way to spend a birthday. Yeah, and we wish you a year filled with a lot more wildlife. Looks like our Ellies are gradually moving up into the bush. They're further away, kind of north of the river now. These trips down to the water probably happen at least twice a day for many of these savanna elephants of the greater Kruger. But the big driving force behind this moving is the collection of food. For an adult elephant bull, certainly the big guys, the 7 or 8 tonners, they have to eat something like a quarter ton, well over 500 pounds of vegetation every single day. And that is a full-time job. It probably takes 15 or 16 hours a day to collect that much food. So they have to keep moving. As a result, they don't do a whole lot of sleeping, probably an hour or less per day. But quite amazingly, very big as the bulls, on some occasions will lie down. There's a bit of a myth that they sleep standing up, certainly on their feet, but yeah, it's not true that they never sleep lying down. They absolutely do. Always a good idea to do a bit of panning around. You never know what else might be out there. These riverbanks often attract the local lion prides. Regularly see things like leopard down and around here as well. You just never know what you're going to see. Thanks very much for your comment, Casper. A lovely way to sort of end our afternoon. And we are unfortunately approaching the end of the afternoon for Live at the Waterhole. I think we'll be wrapping up the show in about 2 minutes. A nice, varied and diverse afternoon it has been, with a good opportunity to look at a couple of big things, but a couple of small things as well. And as I said just a few minutes ago, the show will be back once again tomorrow afternoon, same time. Be back to chat you through some more wonderful wildlife content, live and unedited as it should be. So be sure to hop on again, join the largest safari vehicle in the world, and let's see what we can see. But from myself, Lauro, our directors Chulu and Jordan, as well as the entire extensive Wild Earth team behind the scenes, making everything function, thank you very much. We hope you are out there enjoying your Saturday. Be safe, have a wild one, and hope to have you on again soon. But cheers for now.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome aboard the welcome to the tent, should I say? Welcome to